Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wright Perspective. Today is our first episode of the year of our Lord 2024. Okay, Happy New Year. And yes, it's so exciting, y'all. I can't believe it's 2024. Time is just flying. And you know what is a great way to really kick off the new year is just to make new commitments, such as subscribing to this podcast. Okay, click subscribe. Okay, like, share. We need you. Okay, on all of our platforms. Our audio listeners, we thank you all so much for engaging as deeply as you do. Video viewers, click that subscribe. We need you. All right, so what's our content for the first episode of 2024? It is the 2023 movie musical, The Color Purple. The 2023 version of The Color Purple was just released on Christmas Day and is based on the stage musical of the same name. Now, the stage musical, that original Broadway production, it ran from 2005 to 2008, earning 11 Tony Award nominations. And there was a Broadway revival that ran from 2015 to 2017 that won 2 Tony Awards, including Best Revival of a Musical. And both of these musicals, the stage version and the 2023 movie version that we're going to be talking about today, they're all based on the 1982 novel, The Color Purple by Alice Walker. And she actually earned a Pulitzer Prize for the book and became the first African-American woman to win a Pulitzer Prize for fiction. Now, the 2023 movie musical is not only the second musical adaptation of the book, it's the second movie adaptation of the book. The first movie adaptation, which most people are familiar with, it was released in 1985. It grossed $98.4 million against a budget of $15 million and was nominated for 11 Academy Awards. It didn't win any. It was also nominated for 4 Golden Globe Awards, and it won 1. So obviously, with this kind of legacy, the bar was very high for the 2023 movie musical. What team would take this on? Well, that's a great question. I'm happy you asked. The screenplay was written by Marcus Gardley, and it was directed by Blitz Bazawule, and I should have looked up the pronunciation of his name. It's Bazaule, Bazawule. And it was produced by Steven Spielberg, Oprah Winfrey, Quincy Jones, and Scott Sanders. The film stars Fantasia Barrino, Taraji P. Henson, Danielle Brooks, Colman Domingo, Corey Hawkins, H.E.R, who in her real name is Gabriella Wilson, Halle Bailey, Lou Gossett Jr., Phylicia Pearl Mpasi, Ciara, John Batiste, and Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor. Okay, this is just a list of heavy hitters, y'all. And with a budget of $100 million, the film earned $18 million on just its opening day. Okay. And so for some, these budget numbers, this legacy, this cast, all of this, those things will be enough to consider this movie a classic. But today we will determine whether it is a classic from the right perspective. We'll do a recap, we'll discuss the movie, and then we'll take a vote using a voting symbol picked especially for this discussion. But we gotta start with intros. Kick us off, bro.
I'm Aubrey Wright. I'm the oldest.
I'm Genia Wright. I'm the middle.
Hi, I am Brittany Wright, and I am the youngest.
And y'all, we are doing The Color Purple. What was your, and I know we got to pick a voting symbol, but I gotta ask, what was your relationship to this book, this movie, this musical, this content before you watched the 2023 musical?
Before you answer that question, I want to make sure, was Tamala Jones in your list of names? Because she was somebody else. I mean, I'm sorry, Tamala Mann. She was another star in the movie.
I didn't even list her name, but yes, she played.
It was the intro.
She should have been in there
to the whole movie. So definitely got to put Tamala Mann in there.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Tamala Jones too. I love you.
Yes,
she wasn't in this movie, but Tamala Mann though.
Yes. So what about your relationship to this content? Had y'all read the book? Had y'all seen the stage musical? Had y'all, seen the 1985 version?
Well, I guess I'll answer first. I had actively for the past 40 years avoided watching this movie at all.
Why?
I'm sure I probably said this before. I don't typically watch serious movies purposely. Like if I'm going to the movies, I don't feel like being depressed and angry and all that kind of stuff. Most often, so The Color Purple would be something that I would have had to stumble on and start watching or something, or a situation like this where I had to watch it, but I just never found. And
so you won't go see a movie called Slavery. What happened?
Oh yeah, any of those,
not going
any
to
of
see
those
that.
new age slavery movies, it's just not my jam. I'm just not. I know, and I just at a certain point, it starts to feel like, are we supposed to just be getting? What are we doing here? Like at a certain point with certain kind of movies, and it's like movies at a certain point was more about fun than anything else. And over the years, it's morphed into a lot of things. And I'm just saying, typically that would be a movie I would have, watched. But I did watch it in preparation to go watch the new Color Purple. And I literally haven't seen anything about that movie. I remember because when we were growing up, I don't know if both of you remember this, but it was a movie that it would be watched quite often within our family. Now, I mean, like our extended family, like if everybody was getting together, it was one of the movies that people would put in that I guess was okay for
in the rotation, kind of.
Yeah, it was in the rotation, okay for everybody to watch. But every time they would put it on, I would just leave the room and go do whatever else I was doing. It's funny because I remember one time we were at Granny's in Moon Township, and everybody was watching Color Purple. And again, I left to go do whatever it was I was doing. And I walked back in, and I walked in directly on the scene where the little boy was getting his face cut up, right? And so I was like, yeah, I had the right idea. Let me just leave. But I don't know what's going on there. But it's funny because that scene was all I really had of the movie, and it was interesting watching it now in context. So yes, I had no experience with the movie really up until when I just watched it the other day.
Except for the active experience of not wanting to experience it.
I would say it's more of a Matrix situation, just, like I wasn't anti-Color Purple, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't,
you were
like
just
I wasn't
like
against it. I was
okay.
just like, you know what I'm saying? I was just, and everybody was always talking about how heavy it is, and like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's one of those movies that takes you through the emotional ringer. And the interesting thing about it, I didn't feel that way. It was definitely heavy, but I think maybe because in my head I had expected it to be like
even heavier, right?
Like heavy,
no funny moment.
And the funny thing is like Whoopi is so talented, right? So like Whoopi's so talented, and her timing and everything is just very natural. And the thing is I was feeling bad laughing at parts because I'm like, I thought I'm not supposed to laugh during Color Purple, right? Like, but she was doing stuff that was objectively funny, you know what I'm saying, in parts of it. So so it was just interesting that I was expecting to be in this emotional turmoil for 2.5 hours, whatever it is, and it didn't end up being like that. So, but that was my first.
Sis, do you remember watching it in like the family rotation context, or like?
I mean, that's how I grew up with The Color Purple. Was watching.
Did we watch it at home?
I remember watching it at home. But also I think I just, even outside of that and watching it, growing up, it's just how much it has touched Black culture. Like,
no doubt.
If you say to anyone, you told Harper to beat me, like everyone's going to know exactly what you're talking about.
Any Black
Brittany,
women,
that is so,
any Black women that are going separate ways. We got to do a Maki da. We got to do it. If we don't want to do it, we got to do it. Yeah.
I want to tell you, I've said that so many times. And I
Look,
knew
you
it
didn't
was
even
word.
watch the movie.
I knew it was word. I love Harpo.
Yeah, but that's how much it's resonated.
Is it? I love Harpo. God knows I
God
do.
knows I do. I killed him.
I killed him.
Like so many people have that speech like down pat.
Yeah,
you know the word.
I've never seen it.
But you know it.
Isn't that how? That's how powerful the movie is. Like, so I think that is something where even right down to the little boy, what you doing that for? Like, you know, there are these little parts that are in The Color Purple that we as Black people have taken on and has made it a part of our culture.
Yeah.
So that's for me. And then in preparation for the movie, I purchased the book. I purchased the actual book and I was happy I did, because just reading just the preface and listening to what Alice Walker actually wanted to convey through the book, I was like, okay, it gave me a different perspective and expectation for the newer version of it that came out. And something that came to my mind was, I was like, is this like the second movie maybe that is hood movie meets musical for us that we've done? It wasn't there. What was the first? I'm trying to, or was this the? I feel like we've done one before where it's like hood movie meets musical. But if not, this is like.
Yeah, I feel like you're right. Because I feel like
I can't develop the. I feel like did, but I don't.
Yeah, where it was like
it wasn't something easy like the Wiz.
Oh, School Days.
School Days, that's it. Musical and movie.
Yeah, the movie that exists outside of genre.
That's right.
And so I feel like Color Purple, this newer one, was taking a quote unquote hood movie and moving it into a musical space. And so now this movie has become part of that genre of hood movie meets musical. So yeah,
I would say really outside of the Wiz, I really feel like
the Wiz too.
Well, I feel like The Wiz was definitely, but a hood movie and a musical, without question. But like this one, I really felt like I'm like, this is a musical for real. Like this, if I was to think about a modern day musical, this is what I'm thinking about.
Yeah,
it was it.
And and so I will say, like, I don't remember watching this younger. I feel like it was present. I just feel that, but I don't have any memories of it being present. It's just like it was around.
So you've never seen the original?
I saw the original many times, but the first time I think I was in college when I really sat down and watched it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And of course, I was watching in a community of people that had already seen it a million times. So I just remember it being something that always felt familiar even before I watched it, and I have watched it many times since college, but what I wanted to do in preparation for this podcast that I didn't do was take in some of the stage musical. Do you know, I was in New York when the revival was running. The revival was like 2015 to 2017. I was in New York already. I knew it was up. And it was one of those things where you just take it for granted it's going to be around a while.
Yeah.
And you just don't rush. And I have to now live in regret that I didn't see it on stage. James saw it. And James, he's not the biggest musical person, but he's like, that musical was like, whoa.
At some point, stage. James is going to have to be a part of this podcast. His name, he's like a ghost of the podcast. James, you're going to be like our first guest, or our second guest, because Skylar's our first. Yeah, you have to be our second.
That would be so great because he always has so much to add. Like, and so, for example, for this movie, he knew some of the actors that were in it. You know what I mean? So he always has so much to add. But anyway, so. Bro, when you were just saying though, like this is a musical, I gotta tell you, that's my big takeaway from all of this. Like watching it, it gave me the feeling that we had watching musicals when we were growing up.
Yes.
You know, and I was like, okay, so however musical has become defined for us through life experience, I felt like this was checking the box. Big time. So let's pick a voting symbol, y'all, so we can dig in a little bit more. And so if you're new to our podcast, we always pick a voting symbol that's like it's specifically for the content that we're reviewing. And then at the end of the podcast, we use that voting symbol to determine whether the movie is a classic from the right perspective. Okay. And, you know, generally, you know, we all make recommendations. We have different approaches. Okay. Aubrey tends to pick iconic imagery. Okay. I tend to want to get to those deeper themes, the deeper essence of what the story is about. And Brittany generally doesn't prepare at all and just comes on in here like she doesn't know the podcast gets recorded every 2 weeks and just says whatever on the top of her.
What happened in Goldie Bear and Goldilocks and the Three Bears? Okay, what? Papa Bear, it was too hot. Mama Bear, too cold. Baby Bear, just right. Welcome.
That was a reach.
You're welcome.
That was a reach.
You're welcome.
That was a reach. Thank
you. Listen,
all right.
All of our arms are long. You're welcome.
Way to go, Baby Bear. All right. So I have one voting symbol to recommend. Okay. And I think you guys are going to like it. Okay. To me, it is very much checking all the boxes. Okay.
All right. I'm on the edge of my seat.
And it is a violet flower. Why? Now, there is the iconic moment in the movie where Shug Avery, the character of Shug Avery, she actually makes a reference to the color purple. And she's doing it in the context of just talking about, she basically says, I think God likes to be admired. He likes to see his work admired. And the quote is, I think it pisses God off when you walk by the color purple in a field and don't notice it. You know, she's talking to Celie in that moment. And, you know, when I was thinking about that quote, the first thing that comes to mind, of course, is what Shug is explicitly talking about. And it's living a life of gratitude, you know, being grateful for every single thing and being intentional and noticing everything, taking it all in, being present. But then I thought more deeply about it. And I realized that she might also have been saying that purple is an example of the wonders that exist in the world, but it's up to us to seek out those wonders. You know, it's like beauty is out there, but you have to go and find it. And so if you think about it that way, it's just one of the many ways that Shug was showing Celie and trying to say to Celie, you deserve better. And only you can know what better is, and you have to go out there and get it. You know, so I thought that violet flower, they were walking through a field of flowers. I don't know what kind of flowers they were.
Well, actually, you took my idea, and you took the idea that I had. It's called a hedgerow rose.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called a hedgerow rose.
Love that. Well, bro, is that your voting symbol?
Yeah, that was the same thing. I had the same idea. So that I had looked it up just now, so I could say what the name
Hedgerow rose.
Hedgerow rose.
Sis, what about you? What comes to mind for potential voting symbol?
Well, mine was going to be either the purple flower or just that picture of the little girls. But I think we all say the purple flower.
I believe
hedgerow rose
aligned. Yeah, and I don't even know if that's happened before. But I don't know if but yes. So I think the hedgerow rose, should we call it purple flower?
Purple flower.
Purple flower. Because I think by the end of this, I'm gonna be like, what's again?
Yeah, okay, purple flower. Purple flower. Purple rose. Let's say purple.
Purple rose.
Because I think it's a rose, right?
It's a rose.
Yeah, the color, it's a hedgerow rose. So we'll say purple rose.
Love it. So at the end of this podcast, the 2023 musical version of The Color Purple must receive 3 purple roses. If it receives 0, 1, or 2, it will not be a classic from the right perspective. Okay, so let's get going. All right, here.
Listen, can I just say, let's just say purple flower.
Purple flower, because it might not be a rose.
I just caught another thing that said called it a Cosmo. So I have not done enough research.
Purple flower.
And always,
because one day there might be like a flower expert on this, like that's not a hedgerow rose.
Totally.
Hedgerow roses are native to Myanmar. What are you even? And I'll be like,
right.
And that's where it was filmed.
Or it'll be like, purple is the one color that roses don't grow in.
Right.
Everybody knows that. Duh.
Hello.
Right.
Right.
So, because bro, and I'll be honest, I tried to look it up too, but I didn't look up specifically what flower was in the movie. When I Googled, and I abandoned it very quickly because I became overwhelmed.
Right.
But the thing I Googled was, how often does purple appear in nature? Because I couldn't think of other purple things.
That is
other than a flower.
Something that you would.
Could you all think of other purple things?
No.
There's some colors,
but I'm just saying that's
unusual.
a very Genia thing to Google. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, but there are purple onions.
Yeah, there's
okay,
so
that's the second one.
Purple.
There's different purple plants.
Yeah, there's purple eggplant.
That's why I abandoned
purple
it.
Cabbage.
Yeah.
That's why I abandoned it, because what came up was basically articles saying that it is less common, but it's out there.
Yeah.
It was, you know what I mean? It wasn't like there's only one or two things, but it is less common.
Yeah.
You know.
Purple flower.
But purple flower. Okay.
All right.
So let's now do a recap. Spoiler alert. Okay. Spoiler alert 15 times. Normally spoilers don't matter because our movies are so old. Our stuff is rusty, dusty content, and that's why we love it. Okay. But this is brand new. So we need to hear you. And actually, you know what? When we post, we're going to put it in the message too, which we generally don't do. Spoiler alert. So people will know. And so we do a recap though. So make sure that everyone's able to follow the discussion and participate in the conversation. So let's do this recap of the 2023 musical of The Color Purple. The movie begins in 1909 on the Georgia coast. We meet two young women, Celie, played by Phylicia Pearl Mpasi, as the child, and Fantasia Barrino as an adult. And Celie is 14, and her younger sister Nettie, who's played by Halle Bailey as a child, and Ciara as an adult, they are best friends, and they are clearly like each other's lifeline. You know, their loving and kind and generous mother had passed away, and they're being raised by their father, Alfonso, played by Dion Cole, who is, you know, he sexually abuses Celie, fathering two children with her, Adam and Olivia, and then taking them away from her shortly after they're born to quote unquote give them to God. Eventually, the father marries Celie off to a man that calls himself Mr., played by Colman Domingo. And he basically marries her because he needs someone to raise his three children and keep house for him. He is mentally, physically, and sexually abusive. And if that wasn't enough, he tries to rape Celie's sister Nettie. And Nettie had only come to stay with them because she had to flee her family home after her father tried to rape her. And when Nettie resists Mister's approach, he pulls a gun on her and he throws her out, and he threatens to kill them both, kill her and Celie, if he ever saw them together. Nettie promises to write, but Mr. won't let Celie check the mailbox. So we don't know. By 1917, Mr.'s kids are all grown and out of the house. His son Harpo, played by Corey Hawkins, has fallen in love with a headstrong woman named Sophia. Mr. and his father, played by Gossett Jr., they hate Sophia immediately because she won't treat them or Harpo as superior to her. When Harpo does try to control Sophia by beating her, she fights back and leaves him, taking their child with her. In 1922, a famous blues singer, Suge Avery, played by Taraji P. Henson, comes to town. And it turns out that Suge is the estranged daughter of the local preacher, played by David Allen Greer, and was the only woman that Mr. ever loved. She performs at Harpo's juke joint and stays with Mr. and Celie when she comes to town, sleeping with Mr., which Celie really doesn't mind too much, and becoming very good friends with Celie. At some point, that friendship does become physical, but the connection is actually something greater than romantic love. And as she leaves town to go back to Memphis, she promises Celie to take her with her at some point. She says, Celie, I'm going to come back for you. Before Suge leaves, she discovers that Mr. has a trunk full of letters from Nettie that Celie has never seen. She gives them to Celie. And reading them, Celie learns that Nettie is not only alive, but living in Africa with, wait for it, both of Celie's children. After Nettie was run out of Mr.'s house, she found a job with 2 missionaries that had apparently adopted Celie's kids. What are the chances, right? And by 1930, Harpo's ex-wife, Sophia, had a new man and a friendship with Celie. One day they all go to town together, and the white mayor's wife asks Sophia to be her maid. When Sophia says no, she is beaten in the street, arrested and jailed for 6 years, and then forced to work for the mayor's wife. Soon after that, Suge does keep her promise to come back for Celie. And she probably saved Mr.'s life, frankly, because Celie had actually reached her breaking point and was about to slice Mr.'s throat. By 1945, Celie has a new life in Memphis with Suge. She has lots of friends and nice things in her own room for the first time in her life. On her birthday, at a party full of friends and loved ones, she finds out that her father has died. At the funeral, she learns that he was actually her stepfather, and the home and store that she grew up working in actually belonged to her real father and had belonged to her and Nettie the whole time. So what this means is the man that was abusing her all her life was not her father, and that she actually had both a father and a mother that loved her. She turns that general store into a clothing store using the sewing skills that her mother had taught her before she passed away. And Celie's life is full at this point, and she has her friends with her, Suge and Sophia. They're by her side every step of the way she's building her enterprise. And for the first time, she loves herself fully. Mr., whose life had really gotten much worse since Celie left him, as she was leaving him, she put a curse on him, saying that until he did right by her, nothing he ever did would work out. And that curse was quite effective. Okay, because his life had gotten much, much worse. And to try to break the curse, he seeks Celie's forgiveness, which she does grant him. And without telling her, he sells part of his land to hire an attorney to track down Nettie, the kids, and bring them home. After intercepting an urgent letter from Nettie, where she explains that that her whole group of missionaries, that they had been displaced and were in danger. And he was successful in bringing them back to the United States. And then, as a surprise, he brings them to Celie's annual Easter dinner. Celie has not only managed to bring herself a life of professional success, she has an entire community that now rallies around her, and a group of friends that all believe in her and love her. And now, to boot, by the end of the movie, she's got her sister and her children with her. The end. So, okay, y'all, that was a rough one because I didn't really write it out. I just kind of had bullets and I was trying to remember.
No, you hit it.
Normally I'd script it, but I got a little tight on time. So part of that was riffing. So that is the 2023. And I'm going to tell y'all, this is different from the movie, from the 1985 movie in several ways. It's also, I read a rundown of the stage musical. On Wikipedia, they actually have a detailed synopsis of the whole stage musical, and it's different from that. So people really are, when they're doing these adaptations, they really are taking time to think about how to get to the essence of the story, but they're taking liberties. Okay. And Alice Walker's, she's been present and involved in all these iterations, by the way, but these people are taking some liberties with these stories. So anyway, on that topic of taking liberties, sis, I know that you had talked about, you were the only one of the three of us that got back to that source content. Okay. You went back to the original, to the book. And I don't know, sis, maybe we should start there where you share just a couple of the reflections.
I was really curious to hear that quote. I was really curious.
So I will say this. I had expectations. Let me say that better. I didn't want to have expectations for this new color purple. I just literally wanted to see the old one, see what it was, and see what they did in the new one to see if it was similar. But there was just this large part of me that was like, for whatever reason, because you guys, I read, but I am not like an avid reader. Like I have books and things like that, but I'm not like, oh, my whole room is a bookshelf. And so like it is, but for whatever reason, I just had this strong desire that was like, read the book, read the book. And so I didn't get a chance to finish it. But what I did finish was the preface before I saw the new one. And I'm not going to read this. So this copyright of this one is, because I want to get that right. I'm sorry, I should have had that. So it's the preface. So the copyright of the book is 1982, but the copyright preface is from 1992.
Yeah,
that's like even better, because that's like after she has heard and everything that people have taken
that would
from
be
it.
After the 1985 movie.
Yep.
But before, well before this current iteration.
Yes. And so this is not long, but there are just like 2 parts, kind of. So I'll just read them. Whatever else The Color Purple has been taken for during the years since its publication, it remains for me the theological work examining the journey from the religious back to the spiritual that I spent much of my adult life prior to writing it, seeking to avoid. Having recognized myself as a worshiper of nature by the age of 11, because my spirit resolutely wandered out the window to find trees and wind during Sunday sermons, I saw no reason why, once free, I should bother with religious matters at all. I would have thought that a book that begins, Dear God, would immediately have been identified as a book about the desire to encounter, to hear from the ultimate ancestor. Perhaps it is a sign of our times that this was infrequently the case, or perhaps it is that it is the pagan transformation of God from patriarchal male supremacists into trees, stars, wind, and everything else that camouflaged for many readers the book's intent. To explore the difficult path of someone who starts out in life already a spiritual captive, but who through her own courage and the help of others breaks free into the realization that she, like nature itself, is a radiant expression of heretofore perceived as quite distant divine. When I read that, I was like, oh, when you first see the very first Color Purple, you're like, this is a tumultuous life. Celie, you made it, girl. You made it. You got land. You got a store at the end. Like, you're seeing that. But then when I read that, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, it is that, but it's deeper. Something that can then extend to all people in a sense of finding yourself and finding what works for you. And in this case, in her case, talking about this spiritual awakening of the divine is in everything I see. The divine is in the trees. That's that part where it's Shug and it's talking about the color purple and what it is. Like that to me was the essence of the movie showing what she wanted the book to be. And so when I read that preface and there's a little bit more of it, I then went and saw the movie and everything just kind of fell together. It all made so much sense why someone would go into this direction with the actual musical.
The new one, not
the new one.
Okay,
gotcha. The new one, yes. So
and
I thought,
can I tell you? So there is on HBO, not they don't call it HBO Max anymore. It's just Max.
Max,
okay. Yeah. On Max,
I do wonder what the story behind that is.
Yeah, there is a documentary on the making of the 2023 musical of Color Purple, and it came out 3 days after the film. So the film came out on Christmas Day, December 25th, and the documentary came out on December 28th. And in that, Oprah, she talks with all of the cast members, by the way. I actually do recommend it. I thought it was a really good documentary. She talks with all of the cast members. She talks with, even the people who did the behind the scenes pieces that you don't normally get to see, like the choreographer and the makeup director and the set director. And let me tell you, many of those people were Black, by the way. Okay. Which gave me so much life. But she talked to who? Alice Walker.
Come on.
And it was so great because you can go on YouTube and you can see interviews with Alice Walker talking about the book and talking about the 1985 movie. But this was a chance to hear her voice coming out of her face, talking about the 2023 musical. And in the discussion, one of the things that Oprah asks her is, what does silly mean in 2020? In the documentary was obviously in 2022, because she said, what does silly mean in 2022? And here is what Alice Walker said in response to that question. It means that I've watched a lot of women become free to express their love, their sexuality, their spirituality, period. She didn't say period. I'm saying period.
That was the end of the sentence.
End quote, I guess I should say. But sis, it's what you were just talking about. So in some ways, when you're reading that her intention was to free people and to acknowledge the divine, look, what she has now said in this documentary is that mission was accomplished. So thank you, Alice Walker, and right on. That's really powerful.
Absolutely.
And so where do we start with this? Sis, you corrected me already on talking about some of the other cast members. Okay, let me just get a couple other names out there that weren't on the headline that I gave earlier. Mm-hmm. But David Alan Grier was in this movie. Okay, I don't think I said his name before.
You did, but it's worth mentioning again.
Mm-hmm.
David Alan Grier, he has I don't want to say he's revived. I don't want to say that, but like he is like back doing something.
He's having a renaissance.
Yes, like I'm like, David Alan Grier is so layered. You're so good. So good. Anyway,
let's what do we mean by we're surprised by you, David Alan Grier? It's because he sang in this movie. Okay, so let me make a recommendation and y'all tell me what you think. Why don't we normally start with talking about the story and the plot and all of that. But bro, your reflection earlier where you were like, this felt like this was a musical. Check the boxes. This was a musical. Why don't we start with the music and the dancing? Why don't we start there? How did y'all feel about the songs, the choreography? How did it leave you?
Man. You want sources?
Yes. I enjoyed all of the music from the very beginning. My soul was in the theater. I was like, first of all, let me tell you right now, I purchased my ticket probably almost a week before. I would give it about 4 or 5 days. And I purposefully picked it and wasn't nobody in that theater except for about 2 seats up towards the front. So I know my ticket had already been purchased. Do you know some people had the audacity to buy a ticket right beside mine?
Why do people do that?
So when I got into the theater, it wasn't a ton of people because I saw it at 4:40 on a Thursday, but it was, it was a good crowd, but enough for all of us to be spaced out.
Because you probably got a really good seat, and they probably
did. It was right in the middle.
But that's what happens. So if you get the most
desirable seat,
somebody will get.
They get up in. Yes.
Yeah.
They sat right beside me. It was a couple. So I sat down and I said, Brittany, are we going to be uncomfortable this whole movie just to make a point? Or are you about to move? I said, you know what? Let's not crowd each other. I'll move. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to say, but y'all probably just bought these tickets today.
Right.
So, anyway, they was trying to stop my shine in that movie. And I said, absolutely not. So I moved about 3 or 4 seats away and I spread out because I was already planning to have 3 seats to myself. And I did just that.
Yeah.
So my soul was free to watch the movie in its totality. I couldn't wait. And when it opened up with Tamala Mann, I was not expecting that. And what you all need to know is that on purpose, if there's a movie that I really want to see, I'll see the preview one time and then I don't plan on seeing it ever again. I see The Color Purple and I note it. I said, okay, that's coming out Christmas Day. That was it for me. I didn't watch any interviews. I didn't care about any trivia. I didn't want any of that in my brain. I just wanted to experience it in the moment. So the way they opened that movie so powerfully, I loved it. But I will say
the song Brittany's talking about is called Mysterious Ways. And it was Tamala Mann, David Alan Grier, Halle Berry, and the Color Purple Ensemble.
Halle Bailey. Yes. Listen, let me tell you something. But in general, my favorite songs were Hell No
Oh, hell no. There was Danielle
no.
Brooks in the ensemble.
Listen, there was no games. But even over that was the song that the guys were singing when they were building the house. They danced and they sang so well.
Working. Corey Hawkins in the ensemble.
Yes, the choreographer, I don't know who you are, but you're amazing. And I was wondering to myself, I'm sorry, did they cast Alvin Ailey at some points in this movie?
Fatima Robinson is the choreographer. She talks in the documentary and goes through her process.
I plan to watch the documentary after this is over. So watching that, every dance move, even right to when we were watching Celie walk through the men who were on the line and they were making the music with beating the ground, and watching her walk into the waterfall area with the women who were washing the clothes. And I was just like, you're experiencing this movie. You're not just watching it, you are in it. And you're feeling everything that the person that is singing is feeling. And I thought about the both of you while I was watching. And the song you were just
talking about with the men on the line, that is the song She Be Mine. And it's Phylicia, Pearl, and Mpasi and the ensemble. And it is when she has just happened upon a baby in a store that she believes to be her child. And then that inspires her to, we go into her imagination.
Yes. And watching that, and I thought about the two of you as the musical was happening, because you both always say it all the time. Is the song moving us along in the movie? And I was thinking to myself, I feel like all of these songs did. And even if they paused you just for a moment in time, it wasn't a pause that was just like, this is unnecessary. It was a pause that was like, we needed to explore this a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I enjoy the music so much.
Yeah. And what about you, bro? The music, the dancing.
And I don't think I've said this too much, so I hope it's not, it doesn't sound whatever. But I really think the music was perfect. I think the
I don't think you've ever said that, bro.
Yeah, but I really feel like that. I really feel like the music was perfect. I feel like every musical number was great. All the dancing was great. It wasn't too much. It wasn't too little. All of the songs had meaning. And even when they broke out, it made sense. Because, and when I say broke out, like, they would go into mental spaces, so the song or the number would be in a mental space, and you understood that they're like showing the emotion that the person is feeling in that moment. And even with and in the one scene where they were in front of the I think it was Taraji and Fantasia were singing in where the white staircases were.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that was a callback to the Nicholas brothers dance thing, the video that you see where they're dancing in that scene.
That song was What About Love? Fantasia and Taraji P. Henson.
And that even made me think, if it is, because it looks so much like it, I really feel like it might have been a throwback to that. And if it is, it almost makes me wonder, what else did I miss in this? Right. Like if they did that there, what am I watching that I didn't see? But yeah, all the music was, and there were times that in the original, because there was music in the original, obviously as well. I don't know if it's funny because I don't know if I would go as far as to call it a musical, but there was music in the.
It's definitely not considered a musical.
Yeah,
in 1985 one.
Yeah, there's music in the movie, but there are moments where the music felt a little, for me, wedged in. And it's interesting what Brittany was talking about, because like in the original movie, I actually enjoyed the original movie way more than I thought. I really enjoyed that movie. There were a couple of things that bothered me that I'm sure we'll talk about once we get into story. But as far as the music goes, there's a number where they're in the juke joint, okay? And they start hearing people singing in the church. And then there's kind of like a church juke joint kind of like loudness battle for a second, and then everybody
Loudness
from
battle.
yeah, because it wasn't like
They
it was
have
like,
those in my apartment building. But anyway, please continue.
there you go. Because I'm sure you in apartment buildings like, you're gonna be loud. Guess what? I got THX up in here. But
meanwhile, I just sit in my living room and I bop my head because I can hear every
you're
word.
like,
I'm
yeah,
like,
that's the jam.
it's
I
like
like
it's
that
playing in
playlist.
here.
Nope. I go in the hallway, I see where it's coming from, and I send an email to management. But anyway, go ahead.
It's a very Genia thing to do. Very, very Genia. But
there are rules.
There are rules here. And as your de facto apartment captain, but self-appointed, in fact. But but that scene where Suge is singing in the juke joint, it's like, first of all, what are you doing in the juke joint on Sunday morning? Like, that
was a very odd place
weird.
to be. It was like
that was kind of weird.
It was a brunch show. It was a brunch show.
But after that, they're all just kind of walking down and they're all going into the church and they're singing and they're walking. And that part just felt very weird to me. You know, and it even feels weirder now that Brittany read what she read, because in that moment, it seems like everybody was returning to that theology, actually, as opposed to you know, kind of transcending it. Basically, what she's talking about, like, there are these universal things that we all tap into. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I hear when you read the quote that you read. But I'm just saying, it's just interesting because that always felt wedged into me. You know what I'm saying? Like that scene and that song and the way they did it, and they even that they did differently because the way they changed it, because that was ultimately the part where Suge reunited with her father. But I'm saying in this version, the song was Suge just walking into the church by herself.
And maybe God is trying to tell you something. Taraji Henson and David Allen Greer.
Yeah. And
it didn't. That song. And I got a snap.
And the way that they did it, first of all, it was great. You know, not too much. It reminded me of Sister Act 2, where Lauryn Hill and the other woman were singing His Eyes is on the Sparrow. But yeah, so that scene was more about, I felt like I said, I felt like the scene before was kind of the opposite of what she was describing in that quote you just said. But this one made it feel like it was a daughter reuniting with her father. And I felt like that was for me, it was so much more powerful. And it was like, it made, so even the small numbers, I just felt like were really well done and really pushed the story along emotionally. So yeah, I literally, and I'm surprised. And I'm surprised at that. But like, none of the songs got on my nerves at all.
But you know what though, bro? I said to myself when I saw it, I was like, this very first scene, I was like, Aubrey is going to love this very first scene.
That's my favorite one.
Yeah, I was like, Aubrey loves old school gospel music. And I was like, that is what
that is what it is. That is what it is.
But you know what it wasn't? It wasn't overdone. Because I'm going to tell you, one of the things that's rampant out here in these streets is people over singing. People over sing out so here. Much. Okay. It is like, how many runs can you do in one stanza? Okay.
Especially
and how much can you scream, you know, for effect?
Especially in a remake situation.
Yes.
Because like, and that was something that was common, I think, across the whole cast, that nobody was trying to outdo anything. It was like, this is and like you said, it was just enough. I'm not trying to show off. We all know what Fantasia can do.
Listen.
All right.
Well, we know what she can do.
Yeah, we know what she can do. but like, she didn't have to, her single number, she dabbled a little more. You know what I'm saying? But like,
but it was just enough. It wasn't too much. She had a couple of songs that were just her. One was Dear God, Suge, which was just her. And then also I'm Here. And then at the end, Superpower. Okay. Those are the ones where it was just Fantasia. In every single one, she hit that exact right balance of giving it to you, and then just roll this like
smoothly
moving us through
and just smooth it on. Because the thing about it is what makes a musical great to be, it's like these songs are expressing what's going on and their emotions and what they're feeling. It's not really about the song. The song is a function, showing what's going on.
It's a tool.
And if you get to a point, it's a tool. It's a tool to use to explain what's going on. And when you're doing too much, it starts being about the song rather than moving that story.
Yes. And let me just read out some of these songs, okay? So there was Huckleberry Pie, which was Halle Bailey and Phylicia Mpasi. Mysterious Ways. We already went through that list. She Be Mine, which was Phylicia Mpasi. Oh, sis, that was that vivid imagery you were talking about. Keep It Moving, Halle and Phylicia. Working, Corey Hawkins. Hell No, Danielle Brooks. Suge Avery by Fantasia and Colman Domingo. Dear God, Suge, Fantasia. Push the Button, Taraji P. Henson. What about Love? Fantasia, Taraji P. Henson. Agoo, The Color Purple Ensemble. Hell No, Reprise. Miss Seeley's Blues, Taraji P. Henson. That Sister. Miss Seeley's Pants, Fantasia, Danielle Brooks, Taraji Henson, and H.E.R. I'm Here, Fantasia. Maybe God is trying to tell you something, Taraji and David Alan Grier. The Color Purple, Fantasia, Danielle Brooks, Taraji P. Henson, Ciara, Corey Hawkins, and Colman Domingo. That was that end scene around the tree. And then Superpowered, Fantasia.
Now,
that's the main track list.
Which song was it that, because I felt like it was a reprise of Sophia's song whenever Celie was going to see her in prison.
I think that was a callback to Hell No.
Okay.
It might have been. It's not listed here as a separate. It's not on this particular list.
I held it. Oh, go ahead, bro.
I wanted to ask, Genia, do you know, it seemed like there wasn't no lip singing in this whole, I mean, I'm saying everybody sang for their own.
Yes. Everybody that was their voice. I did not read about anybody having a voice.
Nobody.
And that in and of itself, with how many people they had singing, that everybody did their own little thing, and there wasn't even any weak points. And even when it's this, like you know, when we always talk about one of our favorites, My Fair Lady, and they had his name escapes me, but he did the talk singing. And it was cool because they actually kind of fit his character. You know what I'm saying? But it was clearly a situation. Well, to me,
Rex
it looked
Harrison,
like a situation.
Who was playing Professor Henry Higgins. He didn't sing. He just kind of talked.
Yeah, he talked, but it seemed like a situation where they were like, this dude is just perfect, but he can't sing. That's the only thing. He can't sing. So we're just going to put him in and we'll have him talk.
We'll figure it out.
Sing. Yeah. We'll figure that out.
And he did such a good job.
He did.
He was,
and it was great. Rapping. And it was great. But the point I'm trying to make is there was none of that in this. Like I don't know. I didn't know all these people sang. You know what I'm saying? Like,
my gosh, just tore the roof off the place. Yeah, I mean,
that reprise I was talking about, you guys, I held it together in that movie. When she
but it was hard.
I held it until she was walking out of that prison. And my eyes, I was done. I was sobbing. I was sitting in my chair sobbing, like when she was walking out of that prison from Sophia, because
it's a Hell No reprise.
Yes,
Fantasia and Taraji P. Henson.
So part of what Genia was talking about earlier with Sophia going to jail, it wasn't just because she told the mayor's wife no, she told her hell no. And then the mayor approached her and slapped her. And Sophia punched him.
Yup.
And that is when there was a mob of white people that came and beat her up and put her in jail. And it wasn't just that they beat her up, they broke Sophia's spirit.
Yeah.
And so she was in prison, she was in jail for 6 years for telling somebody no. And then fighting back for herself.
For saying no to a job invitation.
to be a maid.
Which wasn't really an invitation. Yeah.
It wasn't an invitation. She was and Sophia was partly a business owner because that juke joint was made in her old house that she had moved out of, but we won't get into that. But it was rude because she had said it no politely at first. And then it was like, hell no, I don't want to be your maid. Like, why are you asking me that? So to me, in this scene, when Fantasia was walking away from the prison, because they allowed her to come see her to drop her off some food on Thanksgiving, which in the original movie, it seemed as though she got a chance to go home for Christmas. But this time, it just showed her being able to go being in the prison. And we got a chance to see that. And when Fantasia was walking out, when the guard told her she had to leave, this is when she was finding her strength. Mm-hmm. This is when she was beginning to find her voice, but you can tell that there was so much emotion behind it. I'm angry because I'm in this horrible marriage that I didn't ask to be in. I'm angry because one of my closest friends, my daughter-in-law, basically, is in prison for just telling someone no, that she doesn't want to be a maid. There was so much layered happening in that. And I felt it through the screen, and that was it for me. I was in there like...
Well, sis, girl, let the record show you made it longer than I did. I cried during She Be Mine because this. So listen, let me just say, if anybody took my sister away from me, I would be done. And if anybody took my child away from me, I honestly, y'all, that started the waterworks for me, and it just kept going through the whole movie because I was just to have the experience of being pregnant, bringing a child into the world, holding your child in your arms for a day or two, and somebody just taking, and not just anybody taking a child from you, someone who hates you and rapes you and is the father of the child, to just take the child away. You never see him again. Honestly, I couldn't handle it. So sis, you made it much further than I did. I was so heartbroken for this character. I was so heartbroken in this story. But at the same time, and this is back to the point you were saying earlier,
shout out to Dion Cole. You did an amazing job.
It took me a minute to recognize that that's who it was.
He did.
He played that out.
Comedians. I said, you know what, Dion?
You show that rage.
Because
I was about to slice him really that day.
Hard.
Yeah, man, I wanted to kill him.
He seems like somebody who puts a lot of work into. Because if you watch his older stand-up comedy through now, he seems like somebody who works at his craft.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Now, he was always good. You know what I mean? Like he was back in the day, he was like a chubby, fat comedian. And he just had this very original kind of deadpan way of he used to have his jokes in his pocket. He'd be like, I'm about to tell y'all some jokes. I wrote some jokes. I'm about to tell y'all some jokes. And we can go ahead and go home. And like, but I'm just saying to see him.
He still does that.
But it is that's his
thing.
He'll always do it at least a part, you know what I mean, of his, which he's staying true to who he is. But I'm just saying, he seems like somebody who's like, I'm gonna work to be good at all these different.
Yes.
And and Dion, listen here, Mr.
Mission
Cole,
accomplished, sir.
Yeah,
you've done it.
So we can talk about
he
that.
He has a show on FX. Does he have a show on FX? haven't gotten it. Because I don't have that channel, but I've seen the commercial for it. He has a serious show that is out, and I haven't gotten a chance to watch it because I don't think I have that channel. Sorry,
Average Joe
or something. That's
started in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is quite a cast here. He got Malcolm Barrett in here, Tammy Townsend, Ashley Olivia Fisher, Cynthia K. McWilliams. Yeah. Okay. They're in season 1. Season 1 was in 2023.
Have you watched Average Joe?
No, I'm saying if we're it feels like we're transitioning to talking about
stuff.
Do it.
You know what I'm saying? The one thing I'll just say about the acting is that, again, there were no weak points. Mm-mm. There were no weak points. But the other thing I really loved about how these actors, what they did, all of them did the exact amount. Nobody, like the lines that were supposed to be the lines, they did them. and they did them not more or less, or everybody knocked their line out of the park. You know what I'm saying? Because like when you see, at first I didn't even know if they were going to have Sophia. I didn't, in the very beginning, it seemed like they were going to do that part. Like I didn't know, because it almost seemed like they were having her abuse him more than anything. But when she said that line, when she, I love Harpo, and I mean she just
that scene as well. Woo.
Yeah, that's what I just said. Like everybody, all the little parts that were, it just, this is how you do a remake, in my opinion. Like, because you ever hear a remake of a song that they start throwing so many runs and stuff in it? It's like, look, man, the song was already
sounds
good.
terrible.
Okay, and now you're just making me want to stop this and go search for the original song. I don't even want to hear your reimagination. Write something else then.
But well, bro, I'm actually really happy you said that, because in the documentary, you get to hear from the director and from the writer. And one of the things the director said, he was like, this is not a remake. This is a reimagining. And part of what he was talking about that made it unique was the opportunity to kind of see what's going on in Celie's mind. This is the first iteration where you get to kind of really understand her interior dialogue a little bit more. And they do that with the visuals. And when Brittany let me know that the book was really a series of letters to God, for the mostly to God, I think it then turns into letters to her sister. But that it's letters to God, that the original book is all an interior conversation.
It's all interior dialogue.
And now they have found a way in this latest iteration to put that on the screen visually, so that we're actually inside of Celie's head for certain parts of the film. So it is again, it's going back to the roots a little bit. And bro, as you're taking us to talk about the performances, and I love that you started this discussion of the acting with the "you told Harpo to beat me" scene, because in the documentary, Oprah and Danielle Brooks, when they first see each other on set, the first day on set, they get to each other and they both just start crying. And part of it is Oprah's journey and experience with this content. And I wanted to tell you all about that. So Oprah, the way that she actually came across The Color Purple, she was doing a local television program in Chicago at the time. And she was home from church sick one day, and she was reading the New York Times and saw the review of the book. She went right to the bookstore. She said, put on her galoshes. She said they're rubber boots. We called them galoshes at the time. Put on her galoshes, and she went and got the book. And she said she read it all in one session, and ended up, before that bookstore even closed that same day, going back to buy all the copies they had in the store. And she gave them out to people after that, because the book was so powerful for her. What made it so powerful is that apparently at the very beginning of the book, and one of the first letters to God, the Celie character is saying, I'm 14 years old and I'm trying to understand, God, what is happening to me and why. And for Oprah, it was her story, because she had been molested at 14 and she had birthed a child as a result of being molested. And I didn't know that about Oprah's story. And in addition to Oprah's connection to the content, this is now a segue to Fantasia, y'all. Fantasia had a deep connection to this content. She said that she was picked on, bullied, and she was actually molested at the age of 7 or 8. And so when she was living in this character, she said, even though she has done the work to heal from these things and to move on from these things, when she steps into Celie's shoes, all of those things come up for her.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about she sang those songs and she delivered those lines and she told that story and she brought us along, it's because that is her story as well. you know. And so I think about Danielle Brooks, you know, being a plus size dark-skinned woman, she's had to stand in her truth. That's the only way. Nobody's going to hold you in your truth when you're walking in those shoes, not in this country and in this world, really. And so I think about the way that she had to use her own experience in these characters. So I think part of the brilliance of the casting was choosing people that weren't just going to, you know, do a textbook.
Oh, let me take on this role.
Take on the role. These are people who are pouring their souls into these performances.
Yeah.
And I think we felt that. And I got to tell you, Fantasia, you knocked my socks off, girl. I didn't know you had been there. And those two, Fantasia and Danielle Brooks, they both were in the stage musical on Broadway.
Oh,
really? Know that?
I didn't know that.
They played those same two roles. She played Celia and she played Sophia on Broadway.
I love that.
Danielle Brooks was in that show, Orange is the New Black. I like that.
Let me tell you something. Danielle Brooks, I don't know if you're ever going to see this podcast.
I hope she does.
But your engagement photos, oh my God. Girl, you are gorgeous.
Even in this movie, she's so good.
You're so gorgeous. When I see you, I light up. All the confidence I need oozes out my ears. I just want you to know that watching you, seeing you, you are amazing.
And she had, and in addition to all of her acting work, but she also had, just since we're sending a special message to Danielle Brooks, she had a show that was, it had just 8 episodes, and it was last year, and it was called Instant Dream Home, and it was a home makeover show, and she was the host of it. And what they would do is they would essentially in one business day, they would remake a person's home. So they have an accomplice. So it would be like the grandma and the husband are making over the home and the wife don't know. So then they come up with some reason to take the wife away for the day. And they redo the whole house. And then the wife comes back at the end of the day and it's like, what? And Danielle Brooks, look, I just thought of all of, like, if you were going to, like, it was just such a perfect and fun show, and her energy just made it even better. She's just great because that was just her being her, you know, and it was just, she's a delight. She's a delight. She's so skilled. She's just
she was perfect for the role. Everything was the only, the casting, I felt everything was perfect. Again, I felt like the only one that was a little was Lou Gossett, just because not because of his acting. I just felt like for the earlier.
I'm laughing because I agree.
No, I'm just saying.
What?
No, not for. I'm talking about as an age choice for the younger.
Yeah.
Part. It just felt like he looked very much older than that role. You know what I'm saying? Like
I was like, no, hold on now, Lou.
and it seemed like they did. But the thing is I think that you get overall. I mean, it's Lou Gossett, you know.
Right. You're like
so like
the
you
legend.
It's not something you get hung up on at all. But it was just one of those things that.
Okay, well, I have a casting choice that is again. I have one like that. Then it was 2.
He went to Greece High School.
Yeah, he went to Greece High School. Definitely.
Why are you wearing dentures in high school? But I was
like, now wait, 30 years from now, let me count now.
Yeah, especially these people who was having kids at like 14. Yeah, right. You know what I'm saying? Like these people 15, 16 years old, and they're having kids. They all kind of look the same age at a certain point. Like, the whole generation is only 20 years apart.
Now, Lou, in real life, you might not be here. You've been looking a little different than this.
Well, let me tell you, I have a casting little thing just like that, where you don't get hung up on it.
Yeah,
but you notice. And that is that they made Celia's sister like lighter skinned. Now, not light skin, but like brown skin. In Halle, Bailey, and Ciara. And the only reason that is worth noting is that part of what is unfortunate is that Celie has just been labeled as ugly. Somebody just decided. It wasn't necessarily about how she looked. And in the 1985 movie, the distance in features between the two sisters were, one, they had just decided she was smart and was going to go to school, and one they had decided was ugly and was going to be mistreated. There really wasn't a physical huge difference between the two of them. They were just two cute little dark-skinned girls, but they had just decided that one was going to be one thing, one was going to be the other. Whereas now you had two sisters where one had some of those features that are more coveted in a racist, colorist, society. And so it added another layer to why one sister was being treated better than the other.
Yes.
And
that was part of the reason why I wanted to read the book.
Yeah.
That was
and
part
again,
of the reason.
it's not something to get hung up on, but you just can't ignore color in a story of America. Complexion for Black people. It's just it's a thing.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm gonna tell you though, like,
but again, you don't get hung up on it.
Right.
No, Halle Bailey and Ciara, they did the thing.
Yeah,
but it's a note.
It's just interesting that with a cast this big, that I just never. It was really like, I remember back in the day when they had the Dream Team basketball team that went over to play in the Olympics.
Yes.
That's kind of the feeling that you were like, I was feeling watching this cast. It was just like
that same way.
Everybody. It was like they were, somebody sat around a room like, look, we are going to, who we getting? All right, let's pull out the list of people who are going to knock this out.
And then Whoopi Goldberg made a cameo.
And that,
and then I didn't expect
and it
that.
was perfect.
Whoopi Goldberg makes a cameo at the beginning of the movie as a midwife who helps Celie give birth. And that's you just see her in that one scene, but it was like, what?
And it gave us it's like, yes, give me a little of the feels. Give me a little of the of the nostalgia. Sprinkle that in a little bit, but don't do too much. You know what I'm saying? And it's like you're giving respect. Just the mere fact that she's there means that you're in the beginning of this movie and Whoopi approves of it. That's right. That's what so you're already moving in.
That's right.
With that correct amount of, okay, I'm comfortable now. This is going to, go in the direction it's supposed to.
It's funny that you would bring that up, because after I got out the movie theater, it was a group of us, and it was a group of Black women that were clearly like family or something. And they were talking and they were like, yeah, because Whoopi was in the movie. And one woman was like, no, she wasn't. They were like, she was a nurse at the beginning that delivered the baby. And she was like, what? I didn't even realize that was her. It was so funny just listening to them have this conversation, because everyone was like, yes, it was. And she was like, I knew that there was a nurse that helped deliver the baby. I didn't.
Were you watching the movie?
But in all fairness,
oh my gosh,
with her. So I think it was probably at some point she had looked away probably for a second, and
was just
getting a sense of what was happening. Exactly. But it was just so funny to listen to them have that conversation, because when she came out, I was like, yes, I was so happy she was in there. I was wondering if they were going to put the original Celie and the original Nettie in the movie, but I guess they
what I was hoping they wouldn't do, but I thought they might do, is throw Oprah in there for a second. And it's not that I wouldn't have enjoyed that, but I feel like they did just enough. You know what I mean? Of the throwback. And if they did, if they just had people from the original cast popping up at different locations, and like, all right now, like
oh, she's giving tickets on the train.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
You got the original Celie serving drinks in the juke joint. Like, all right, y'all.
That's enough.
That's enough. Okay?
So there is one character that has given me pause from the first movie to this one, and another reason why I wanted to read the book, which is Squeak. What's her real name? Agatha something. What she says her name?
I thought
Mary
it was
Agnes.
Mary Agnes.
Mary Agnes.
Okay. That scene
played by her, Gabriella Wilson.
Played by her. I'm like, this is such a small part, but you're here in this movie for a reason.
Because it's important.
Because it's important, but I was just like, you had to have done something else. And
say
so that
more
was
about that, bro,
reason.
when you say it's important. What do you mean?
Well, I won't. Brittany, you sound like you were.
Well, that was the main thing. Just that. That was part of the reason why I was reading the book, because I just didn't understand. Your part is so small. Yeah. It doesn't seem like you're doing something. But although I know you are, but I'm like, your story has to be deeper than what is being able to be conveyed in this small amount of time.
You know what? This makes me want to transfer into the story. And I'm going to tell you why. And what I meant by it was important is that whatever the size of the role or whatever, like, and however big you think you are, let me explain something. This is the color purple. And like, if you have an opportunity to be involved with that, like if somebody gave me, it was like, oh, what you gonna do? You gonna sweep the corner over here in the back? We gonna pan past you one time. I'll be back there.
He's the happiest broom sweeper ever.
I'm just saying, this is one, like we talked about in the beginning, this is just one of those movies that literally, like, it just surprised me.
But bro, when Brittany was posing the question about why that character was in there, and you said it was important, I thought you meant you for the story value of that character.
Oh, I'm so okay.
Because I have thoughts on that, but that's
okay.
What I thought you were going to get to.
What I meant, okay, we're on the same page now. What I meant was, what I thought Brittany was saying was just commenting on it was a smaller role for somebody like her. That's kind of what I'm sorry.
Okay, so sis, I appreciate you raising it, because here's what I thought that character was doing. So part of what you see, if I was going to try to summarize this movie, it is a story of women becoming empowered in different ways. And for these particular journeys that are examined, a lot of it is overcoming, male relationships, men that are oppressing them in some way. And so the character of Squeak, you have to remember, she is the second wife or partner of Harpo. Harpo he's attracted to strong-willed women, right? That's who he fell in love with. That's who Sophia was. That's what he really actually was quite attracted to. But then when that didn't work out, and again, it only didn't work out, and it wasn't because he wasn't emotionally happy in his relationship. It was because he was trying to bring the paradigms that he thought should live in a relationship into the relationship, even though they didn't organically live there. He was trying to be superior to her in the relationship, and it just wasn't panning out. So we see him in his second relationship. Really, he's found someone who he can dominate. And so what we saw is Harpo, someone who we know to be, of all of the men that we're seeing, he has, it seemed, learned a lot of the lessons from the women that he has observed. And it seems like he is striving to have a more balanced experience in terms of his male-female relationships than the other men, his father, his grandfather, these other men that he's seen in his life. But then we see Squeak trying to assert herself, and he just ignores her. He walks right by her. And so even this guy, who's more evolved than a lot of the men in the movie, he's still talking over her. So sis, I thought that it was another story of a woman who was trying to get her voice. She's literally sitting there living her life with a man who owns a juke joint, and he won't let her sing. And she was like, but I sing. And he's literally just moving right by her. Yeah. She's trying to, there's a scene that's like 30 seconds where she is bringing drinks out to some men who are at the juke joint. And they show her such complete disregard. They just take the drinks and walk on by her. She's just being completely disregarded. And by the end of the movie, she has left that town and she's gone to Memphis with Suge and with Celie. And she's now trying to find her own. So sis, in my mind, it's not a role that had a whole lot of lines, but it was just another example of a woman who had found herself in an oppressed situation, who asserted herself and had made her path.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting that I didn't know anything. I don't know anything about the book, or didn't know anything about the book, and the fact that so the book is basically her letters assembled into like a narrative.
Yes, it's more like journal entries.
Okay.
So I feel like it's journal entries to God, and then at some point you have letters to Nettie.
Okay.
So it transitions into that, and
because
the journal entries are like conversations,
and that makes the story better for me, because the part that was hard for me more so in watching the first one than the second one is that the way masculinity and relationships are represented in this movie was just difficult for me to accept that like there were no positive depictions of family or masculinity in this movie. And I think people should tell a story however they, want to tell a story. So it didn't detract from me being able to understand the story. But what would make, because being in a world in general where there's just, every man is just how they were depicted, just these not, these horrible people in many cases where it's not like everybody's like that, you know what I mean? And that's how it felt. But if it's all coming from the concept of a person just telling their experience, I can visualize a person being in a situation where everything they see is that, you know what I mean? It's just bad, bad fortune or whatever you want to call it, that just everything that they see is like that. And for me, that even makes the story more palatable in the sense of everything is taken from the perspective of this person. And we know people who have just had hard lives, you know what I mean? And
also I think about our families, we have a lot of very clear vicious cycles that are playing out. And there are some that are unique to our dad's side of the family, and there are some that are unique to the mom's side of the family. But you go to those families, and these are, frankly, we're very functional, privileged people on the scale of things. Okay. And there's some vicious cycles playing out. It just so happens that our two families don't have physical abuse and sexual molestation as cycles. But I'm just going to say, if you look at what our cycles are, they are playing out over and over and over again through the generations. And so I can see how a cycle plays out in a family, because I see them playing out in ours. We just don't happen to have these particular ones that are featured in this movie, not on a large scale, but so that's why for me it could be true, but it's funny you should mention that, bro. And again, I know this from this they talked about a little bit in the documentary, but I believe but I may have also just read a little bit about it. This was a separate interview that I watched of Alice Walker back in the day. Okay, so this was like in the 90s, this interview. So apparently when the movie came out in 1985, the NAACP was picketing it. All of these Black groups were picketing it because of the way Black men were depicted.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I would tell you makes sense to me. That makes sense to me.
But of course, but of course, the truth of it is, it's because, and this is when you look at the footage of the time, what the people in the movie were saying, what Alice Walker was saying, what they all were saying was, well, if you only have one Black movie, you only get to tell one Black story at a time. And so this particular story has these themes. If there were 5 Black movies up, one of those could have a different theme about Black men, but they were really boycotting and protesting the movie.
What I would have said, like watching the first one, I would have just, to me, if you would have just added, and this is just me, what I would have wanted. This is just a person watching the movie, And I respect movie writers for writing the story that they want to write.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying subjectively, from my opinion, if there was just one example, not even a main character, but just like somebody who had enough of a speaking role that was just a person who wasn't horrible, you know what I mean? Like a man who wasn't horrible, to kind of just throw some balance in there. I would have you could have left everything else the same, but it would have just been in a better context for me. That it's just like, everybody's not like this. Like, everybody's just not abusive people who are trading their daughters around, and you know what I mean? Like, all of this, and disowning people, and you know what I mean? Like, everybody's not like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it would, but I will say this, moving into the new one, that was one of the things I really liked about the story, because when you see the movie's almost 2.5 hours long, right? I'm like, all right, this is about to be a long one. But I didn't feel it, and it's because the pacing of the movie is so good. And everything from the original movie that you're like, okay, that scene was a little long. You know what I mean? Like when they were originally breaking up Celie and Nettie, you're like, okay, you know, it was like, it felt like 10 minutes of them just fighting, you know what I mean, in the beginning. And it's like, we understand the idea that you're trying to get to us right now. We can move on. And I feel like all of those little rough patches is like, it's like, okay, we got 40 years of reflection, right? So we know we could like, after thinking about it for this long, we could make this move a little faster. We could put this scene here instead of there. And it just made the whole story flow so much better. It just really, because you can take all of the musical numbers out, and you have, this movie would be a very streamlined movie. You know what I mean? It would be a very succinct story.
Absolutely.
Which allowed you to enjoy, but it didn't lose anything.
Mm-hmm.
They hit all, they didn't take stuff out in the sense of making the movie feel different. And that's why I respect when they're saying that it's a reimagination, because it's different, but I still give them respect for not losing some of the soul of the, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing I wanted that came to my mind whenever watching the original is that the movie starts in 1909, and that is essentially 44 years out of slavery.
Right.
So when I think about what they're portraying in this movie is even more complicated than that you can get across, right? So seeing all these men be terrible, to me, is a reflection of individuals who are just maybe a generation out of slavery, maybe two. So if your view in the country that you've been brought to, that your ancestors were brought to, and your view of masculinity is what white men were portraying during that time, you are selling your daughters. You are sending them off to marry them off to men. You are disowning your daughters. You are raping your daughters. You're doing these things because this is what you saw, not because this is who you are. This is what you've been taught.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you see, and this is what comes out of trauma. Yeah. And so for me, when I'm watching this movie, I ached for everybody. When I was watching the original 100%, I ached for every last person. That you think that this is okay. This is not just something you were born with doing. This is something you learned. Mm-hmm. This is something you saw. This is something that was taught to you, that you think that this is okay, your own flesh and blood to let them go. And so when I see that, it's not shocking to me that it was, that they were trying to, make sure it didn't come out. And I will say that it did seem a bit more vicious, but also I think this is a part of the story when in the original one, we don't write the story. When we're not the main producers of it, when we as Black people are not telling our own story, this is some of the things that can happen in the movie versus what happened this time, was you got to see redemption. Mm-hmm. You got to see forgiveness.
Yeah, yo, that was big.
That, and it was huge.
That was
big. And sitting there, my annual Easter dinner, this man that was terrorizing me since I was 14 for almost 30 years, and you're here and we're laughing, and you got on my platinum breeches that I sewed for you. You bought my ugliest pair of breeches and you wore them.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like authentic.
Totally.
Like it felt like how it would be. You
know
what I'm
saying?
They
had constructed such a complex character in Celie that we could understand that in all that she had experienced, that she could actually get to that level of forgiveness.
Yeah,
we understood that she had that capacity,
and she didn't break though, because
yeah, that's right.
Because there are certain people. Forgiveness is really for the person forgiving. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like you're not carrying around this burden of this other person or what they did to you. So, but you still know you're not getting back into my life though. You know what I mean? Like you're like, I'm not going, like, I believe you. I believe and I forgive you. I believe you and all that. But it's just there's just too much. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Were we gonna be sitting next to a fire together now? Like this, that there's too much history going on. But being able to see how that arc ended, I really liked that. I really liked how it was like, and it really made me feel like he understood what happened. It wasn't like he wasn't just fronting. You know what I'm saying? He was, life hit him hard, all upside the head. You know what I mean? And he had time to reflect. And it's like, yo,
and that part of him that did that reflection and became a better version of himself, so many people do not do that.
Yeah,
there are so many people
it's
that
tough to do.
You remain that evil individual that doesn't want to grow, and you don't want to become better because you feel you're justified in how you are.
And there are people who never forgive, and they just carry around the anger and the resentment, and as valid as it is, but they continue to live in it. Instead of trying to find a way to get through it.
Absolutely.
And you when you were talking about the value in people of color telling the story of people of color, because you get a chance to have a level of complexity that is authentic. So Steven Spielberg was a producer on the original 1985 version and this one. And so he was interviewed in the documentary. And he said that when Quincy Jones brought him on for the 1985, he originally said no. And he had declined a couple of times because he felt like it needed to have a Black person doing that role. And he didn't feel he should do it. And Quincy Jones, convinced him to sign on. And Quincy Jones convinced him to sign on by saying, "You did E.T. just now, didn't you? But you didn't go to Mars."
Oh, that's great.
Exactly. So as colorful and interesting as that anecdote was, I walked away with a couple of things from it. So the first piece is, I appreciate that Steven Spielberg at least acknowledged that he may not have been the right person.
Yeah.
And that there might have been an opportunity to have someone sitting in that seat that was closer to the experiences that were being portrayed on screen. I appreciate that he just acknowledged it, frankly,
Absolutely.
And second of all, I appreciate that in the 2020, I don't know what the makeup of the team was for the 1985 movie, but for this one, they had a Black choreographer, Fatima Robinson. They had a Black makeup director, Carol Rashid. I mean, when you are watching a documentary, you see Black leadership all throughout this team. Okay. Now it wasn't all Black, so it's not a claim of an all Black. So for example, the set director was a white man, but there was Black leadership. And I really feel like that is what contributed to this one feeling so truthful, not overdone, not underdone, but just hitting a note of reality that was just consistent throughout, And I wanted to talk a little bit about, again, just a couple more little tidbits from the documentary. Why did this movie feel so excellent? Why did it feel so well done? Well, first of all, it had a $100 million budget, so that'll do it. But second of all,
you're doing good.
You should get some quality content out of that. But second of all, it was just the work done. So, for example, the scene of the Suge dance scene, okay, they did 88 takes of that scene. Of that one scene of the Taraji P. Henson, she said they would just ice her knees in between takes, and she'd have to go and do it again. And it's because
so respect to them and her.
It has to be shot from multiple angles, and this piece might need to be changed. 88 takes for just that one scene. I'll give one more little tidbit of just the thought and the planning that went into this thing. That swamp area where the juke joint is, that was an actual man-made lake that existed, that was used for fishing, that they drained. It took them 2 months to drain the lake. They drained it and then built the structures they needed and then filled it back up over 2 days. That's the level of set design we're talking about here, folks. Okay.
It shows.
And that is why it all felt so cohesive.
It was so good.
And so authentic. So we've talked about the music, y'all. We've covered some great anecdotes as we talked through the casting. We've talked about the story itself. Is there anything else you all want to cover before we go to the vote?
I think that it's important to name the love relationship between Celie and Suge.
Yeah.
And just that you got to see a freedom that was happening for the both of them. But I think for Celie as well, because Celie in the movie, just in the story, I'll say that Suge is one of the people that was giving her confidence, and was showing her how beautiful she actually is. And something that I'm sure many people were expecting to see in the movie was that part from the original movie of You Show Is Ugly. I haven't gotten to the part in the book yet to see if that's what actually happens, because there are a couple things that are in the book that are like, it's neither one of these movies. But that I haven't seen if that happens in the book yet. But they didn't do that in this movie. And so I appreciate that. I don't know if they took it out on purpose. I don't know if it was not in the book, like whatever it might be, or just realized because of reimagining, you don't need it. The world is already telling Celie she's ugly, and the world is already telling Suge she's beautiful. You don't need it. And so seeing this friendship become more, and then seeing them share that love song between each other, I just thought that it was a beautiful showing of women being in love, women empowering each other, women looking out for each other, but also showing not just some over dramatized became a love relationship situation. No, you're really feeling this love between them that is almost the love that she was having for Nettie, that she's having for Suge. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that was named. Just
I'm
about
so happy
the
you talked about that. I'm
so
happy you talked about that, because we can't wrap this podcast without really talking about the sisterhood aspect of this film and the friendships. I mean, it was that relationship, sis, that really was the awakening for Celie. But she had other women that really became sister friends. She had Sophia. She had, at some point, she even had Squeak. But it was just and of course it was her sister. And it was really through those relationships that she was able to eventually find strength, find safety, find self, and so this movie is definitely, as much as we've talked about the movie being about forgiveness, as much as we've talked about the movie being about, redemption, it is also definitely a movie about sisterhood and friendship. you know, I'm so happy you didn't let us wrap without hitting on that.
But that was it. I wanted to make sure that was named.
Well, there's so much we could continue to talk about because the movie was so rich. I mean, if this was a 15-hour podcast, we could go
let's keep on going.
Actor by actor. You know what I mean? Character by character.
Song by song.
Because
scene
every
by scene.
character had a fullness. Every character had a complete story. There's nobody that was left dangling at all. Everybody had an arc. And that doesn't always happen. But because of time. Go ahead, bro.
Well, I'm just saying, you talked about the juke joint, but one thing we didn't just mention is that all of the set pieces, like the movie, is visually amazing.
It really is.
I mean, every scene, and
the lighting. Oprah talks about in a documentary how the lighting is like to light black skin as well as it's done in the movie is amazing.
You know, it's funny because with this whole thing, I feel like I should have known that, but I didn't know that about the book was basically written from Celie's perspective, and you know the story she's read from the letters and things like that. And it's funny because the way that Nettie arrived in Africa, the scene looks like Celie would imagine it. If she was reading,
that's right.
You know what I'm saying? But more than this is actually how it was.
It's Celie's imagination.
Yeah, but that's Celie's imagination of how it, and so it just, like I said, that really brings everything into a better. But even that scene, all the scenes were just very stunning, you know.
Totally. Absolutely. And it's so funny, bro. I was a little jarred. Maybe one of the first times that we went into like Celie's imagination. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting to have these moments of like these fantasy worlds, you know, throughout the film. The first time it happened, it raised my eyebrow, not in a good way. But within seconds of the eyebrow being raised, it just came right back down. And probably tears started flowing down my face because I got over it so fast. I was surprised by it though. But it's just because I walked in with these preconceived notions. Because that was truly something unique about this film, that fantastical piece of seeing what was in her brain.
I think we have to remember though, Celie is a child. This movie starts when she's 14. And her entire life has been, and even in the book you see it, Celie is just trying to survive. Finally, when she gets into that middle age that we see towards the end of the movie, she's getting a chance to thrive now. But her entire existence beforehand, how do I get to tomorrow? How do I get to the next hour?
That's it.
With staying alive.
All I know how to do is survive.
That's it. That's it. So I think about, you're reading these letters and your mind is like an elephant in the trees. Like you're visualizing, you're walking down and all of a sudden you're walking through men who are, on the prison line. I can't remember what that type of line is called. And they're doing the
chain gang.
The chain gang. You're walking between people who are the chain gang.
Or the prison line.
The prison line. You're walking in the middle of the prison line. Listen, so that's what I think about. I think sometimes we have to remember that many things, so much innocence has been taken away from people so fast. And called into adulthood, not in a way that's like, I'm teaching you adultness. No, it is, I'm snatching it from you. And now you have to be able to level with these things that are happening to you that shouldn't happen to anyone, whether you're young or old. But they're happening to you now. And now you have to process in a way that no one's ever taught you how to process. So I just think about that. Like, she was a kid. She was 14. And then she, of course we leap through the years. But, one thing I've heard before, from like a counselor therapist, is that you are where your trauma happened. So if you're be 35, but if your trauma happened at 10, unless you're working on it, there's still some piece of you that's 10. So I think about that for Celie. So anyway, That's my last little thought there.
I think Whoopi nailed that aspect of it.
Absolutely. You know? Absolutely.
Yeah. Just as a footnote.
Yeah.
That whole idea you're talking about, because she was older and was able to capture that way of, you could tell she's somebody who hasn't, like you said, she got stopped at 14.
And I know we're about to wrap. I want to just share one more little tidbit. Like I watched an interview, again, this interview with Alice Walker from the 90s, and she was talking about her inspiration for the book. And she was saying that a huge piece of it was her just reflecting on her ancestors and what she knew about them, the family stories, and the people that she never met, and wanting to be in community with these people, these ancestors that she had never met, and with using some of the stories that she knew. She pulled those stories together, and they became inspiration for, or part of, Celie's story. And then she goes on to talk about her parents were sharecroppers, and things like that, and the conditions of the oppression that they experienced, and the life that they, sharecropping obviously was a setup, and how they were set up to fail. And of course, because she's Alice Walker, she's telling it with this you're this vivid imagery. You're seeing it as she's telling it. And I was happy that I saw that interview, because I was able to feel those same feelings when I was watching this movie. Just in terms of, bro, when you were talking about the visual quality of the movie, it was like the visuals were telling a story. And it was just another layer on top of the story that was actually being told through the words, and then the story that was being told through the music, and then the story that was just being told through the great acting, the emoting of the actors. So yeah, that visual quality, oh, so good. So why don't we take it to the vote?
Well,
or we will have a 15-hour podcast.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously this is a classic for me. In fact, this is one of the few movies I'm gonna buy. Like when you're able to get the Blu-ray, I'm gonna get it, because I think it's a piece of art, and I wish there was a genre of movies like this. Like I wish one would come out every year, like real deal. That is a 1950s modern musical, like that. And I didn't know that I could. West Side Story, I enjoyed. You know what I'm saying? And we talked about that obviously extensively. So I'm not saying stuff didn't exist at all, but I'm just saying, like this one, I'm like this. This one hit me where in my musical feels. So the new Color Purple absolutely gets my purple flower.
I feel like because it was made with you in mind.
It was.
It was made with you. It was Black conscious. It was made.
I emailed Oprah to start this whole project.
Yeah. But I mean that on a Black level. Like you are a Black man. I thought you but that as well, because I know you have those connections. Yeah. But no, that's what I mean. Like it was made with you in mind. You are a part of this community, and they thought about all of us when they were making this movie.
That's what the director said. He said this movie is for our generation. That's what he said. Now, I will tell you all, I am well on the record as saying, like, stop remaking, reimagining, rehashing, redoing, making live action. I am well on the record of saying
stop the rereads,
because there's so many creators out there that are ready to come forth. And this methodology of people already like it, so let's do it again. I struggle with it, and I continue to struggle with it. And I just think about, there's another musical out there that has been written and it's new and nobody's ever seen it, and the story is new, and it could be produced in exactly this way with this team, and it would be amazing. But We didn't get to see that. We got to see a reimagining of a story we know already. So that, I just want to say, like, I really think we're missing opportunities. That every dollar that goes into retelling a story, it could be a dollar that's telling us something new. It's just a new opportunity for a new story to be told. Now, that said, that is my general philosophy. That said, this movie, I'm going to watch it 2 more times. Now, at least 2. Now, why did I say
this movie? That's a good old movie.
This movie right there, that's a good old movie. Because certain theaters have child-friendly showings of movies, you know, where they'll say all ages can attend. And what they do is they turn the volume down a little bit so it's friendlier for young people ears. They keep the theater a little brighter, and nobody has an expectation of it being quiet, because it's like, y'all know there's kids in here, deal with it. Okay. And so I was already looking up showings to now go and see it again, so that me and James and Skylar can all go together to see it, you know. And then I just want to have it here, bro. Like you, I want to buy it.
Yeah, I want to buy it.
No, and I'm going to tell you all, I have not had an urge to buy a physical copy of
me neither
in a really long time, but I want to get this one.
Yeah.
The other thing that I want to do is to acquaint myself with Alice Walker. Why I don't know your stuff? Shame on me, Aunjanue, right? Because I do not know Alice Walker stuff. And I looked up, she has novels, she has poetry collections, she has nonfiction books, y'all. Her collection of books, it's a long list of, and her list of honors and awards also long. And now that I know her voice a little bit from watching maybe 45 minutes of interviews and things like that, I'm intrigued by her, and I'm impressed, and I'm grateful for her, and her bravery, her creativity, her willingness to be vulnerable, her willingness to assert a truth that might feel uncomfortable to some people, and then also her imagination. Okay, it's like, oh, Alice Walker, I'm now I should have been a fan of Alice Walker, but now I want to get in there so that I can be a fan in a genuine way, because I'm just so impressed by her right now. So for all of those reasons, this movie does get my purple flower.
Listen, you know, I will tell you, I don't even really know how to put into words what exactly I'm feeling. The Color Purple, by surprise. You've been knowing the original movie almost, came out in 85, so it's literally my existence. And so I was not, when I was watching the original one, and as I stated before, like, man, my heart was just so sad about what I was seeing, knowing that these stories are true. Not that it was based off of a true story, but just knowing that these things happen and have happened and unfortunately are still happening. But it was reading just the preface of the book that there was a piece of it talking, and Alice Walker just talking about how this, and I'll just say it, the sentence is, if it is true that what we run from that chases us, then The Color Purple is the book that ran me down while I sat with my back to it in a field. Reading that part for me, it is ringing true for my current state of life, that although I have not experienced anything close to what Celie experienced, but I have experienced the feeling of feeling ugly just because you exist. You didn't do anything to anyone. You were born. This feeling of just surviving because I have to. I have to. Like, there's no, what else do? You go to work. Hello, you got bills. But not an aspect of thriving. This whole Color Purple became a life for me that I was not expecting. It became something so much more deep for me that I can't even convey because I don't have the words for it, and I'm still experiencing it. And so for that, I say thank you to the individuals that reimagined. Thank you for the original Color Purple. Thank you for the reimagining. And most importantly, thank you, Alice Walker, for allowing whatever chased you down in that field for you to yield to it so you could write this book so that in 2024, right, you have someone experiencing freedom. And for that, I tell you, thank you. And so without a shadow of a doubt, this gets my purple flower. And I hadn't thought about buying the DVD, which you all know I'm not opposed to that because my collection over here is robust. But I still own 2 DVD players. You're welcome.
You can get the VHS. They're coming out with a special VHS.
Exactly. Because why? I have a DVD/VHS player I don't want to part with. Yeah, I said it. You're welcome, world. Okay? And so, listen, I hadn't even thought about that, but I'm here for it. Mm-hmm. I'm here for purchasing.
I want to display it on my bookcase. I don't have the robust CD and DVD and movie collection of Brittany, but I want to have it and I want to show it on my bookcase.
Listen, she has a robust everything else. There is 8 million things on our bookshelf, and I love it. But that is it. Definitely gets my purple flower.
Wow. Well, there you have it, folks. The 2023 version of the Color Purple is a classic from the Wright Perspective. Thank you for tuning in, you all. Love you, bro and sis. This was such a great way to kick off the second half of season 4 of the Wright Perspective. Man, keep watching, keep listening, everybody. Thank you so much. We love you.
All right, love you guys.
Bye. Love you.